Hello everyone, back tuning into the 8th Winter 2018-19 update from GWV.com. So there's 7 updates so far since the beginning of September. We've got 13 of these updates to do, so we are over the halfway point now. We are getting towards the business end of the winter updates. We're going to talk you through all things that we've been looking at through this season of updates in terms of solar activity, what's happening with the oceans, Siberian snow cover. So you know what we've been looking at over the past few weeks. We're going to have another look for today's 8th update. Our analogues package is going to be looking at ENSO. So quite an important update, this one. This one is really quite an important one indeed. We're going to have a look with our analogues at El Nino winters and also ENSO neutral winters that are on the warmer side of ENSO neutral, because it's still a bit unsure about what is actually going to happen with El Nino this winter. So sit back, enjoy it, get yourself a cup of chair, cup of tea and some biscuits, and we'll talk you through the 8th Winter 2018-19 update very shortly. Just got to give a big shout out to James Acriel, our analogues guru and keeper of the solar tracker. So I couldn't do these long range videos without James's input. Big thank you as ever to James Acriel, our analogues guru and keeper of the GWV solar tracker. Also, just to say, coming up later on today, we're going to have a couple of really big updates. So we've got the October update in terms of the E70F and Meteo France seasonal models. So that'll be coming up this afternoon around 3 o'clock. Then around 5 o'clock this afternoon, we'll release the 3rd written update for Christmas. Only got one more of those to do next Sunday, and then we'll be on into the video updates for Christmas. And, of course, this video can be a long video, so you can't watch it all and go, don't worry, it will be placed on the Winter Updates page later on today. And there'll be a written summary that goes with it as well. That'll be around 7, 8 o'clock. This scene, I suspect, will be quite late due to all of the other updates that I've got to fit in through today. But I will eventually get this on the Winter Updates page later on. So I think that's pretty much everything I'm going to tell you. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Actually, there is a couple more announcements. So just to say, if you would like to help support GWV's by becoming a patron or a donor, then this is how you can do it. This is GWV's Patreon account. So if you would like to give us an ongoing monthly donation to help fund the website, help pay for the videos, keep all the content completely free of charge, then you can do it via the GWV's Patreon page. And this is it. We link to this at all the pages at GWV's and in the description at YouTube. So you just come here, sign up for a Patreon account, and then pledge an ongoing monthly donation. We've got 34 patrons so far. And big thank you to all of the patrons for GWV's. If you would rather just give a one-off donation, then this is GWV's PayPal page. So you can give us a one-off donation through the GWV's PayPal page. You can be linked to this at all the pages to GWV's and in the description at YouTube. Just come here. If you've got a PayPal account, most people have these days. You just sign into that, and then you can donate any amount of money that you would like as a one-off donation. And by doing this, you're going to get a shout-out in the videos. If you become a patron, you're going to shout out in videos and a thank you. And if you're a donor via PayPal, you will get a shout out in videos and a thank you. And a big thank you to all of the patrons and all of the donors for GWV. It's helping us to pay for our content. So you're helping to support websites. We are primarily ads funded. We will be remaining ads funded as well. It's just another extra added sort of revenue stream, if you like. So you'll get a mention in videos. I'll say thank you to you in a video after you become a patron or a donor. Unless you'd rather be anonymous. If you'd rather say anonymous, that's absolutely fine. A few people have chosen to do that. Of course, I know who you are if you have donated to GWV. So you're not anonymous to me. I know through PayPal that you've donated. I know who has donated, where they are, all of that kind of thing. It's just in the video I'll say something like thank you to this anonymous donor, something like that, and you'll know who you are, I'll know who you are, and it's all very straightforward and very simple. So a big thank you to all of the donors, and a big thank you to all of the patrons for GWV. You are doing something truly outstanding for the website, and thanks so much to all of you for doing that. Right, and with that rather extended opening to the 8th Winter 2018-19 update, let's get on with it. And we're going to begin really where we left off last week. So last week, you remember, we was looking at sea surface temperature anomalies in terms of this warmer than average area up here in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. And we went back through the archives, and really we could only find a few years that had this massive warmer area across the northern Pacific. One of those years, this year of course, and then we've got 2017, 2015, and 2014. So this has been a regular sort of feature over the past 3 or 4 years. But before that, going right way back through the noughties and into the 90s and even into the 80s, we see that most years are actually quite cold up here in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. It was 1986 that was rather warm up in the northern Pacific Ocean. But generally over the past sort of 30 years, excuse me, this has tended to be quite a cold area. I said I'd go back and have a look through reanalysis, see if I could come up with some matches to the current warmth that we've got in the northern Pacific Ocean. And this is indicative of the kind of thing that I came up with. So this is the reanalysis in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies for 1945. We're looking at this area, October 1945, I should say. We're looking at this area just here in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. So we do have this large warm area here in the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean, so close to Alaska, close to the Pacific coast of Canada. It's quite warm there, and that is kind of a match with the current situation where we see that we've got quite a bit of warmth over here. But I think overall, and this is indicative of many of the years that we look back at through the reanalysis, it isn't quite a good enough match for this year because we've got this colder area over here in the northwestern part of the northern Pacific Ocean, and that's the kind of thing that we see through the reanalysis. So I have struggled, actually. I've gone all the way back to 1850. I've really struggled to find direct matches to the current situation in terms of the northern Pacific Ocean. What's happening up there does look quite unusual, certainly within the archive of NOAA, which goes back to the early 1980s, but also in terms of a reanalysis, which goes much further back. So maybe we're in some degree to uncharted waters here in the northern Pacific, although bear in mind 2017, 2015 definitely, and 2014 both have similar, all have similar sort of characteristics to this situation. So it's not unique in terms of the past 3 or 4 years, but it is probably over a decadal, an interdecadal timescale. Probably is quite an unusual situation that's going on up there in the northern Pacific Ocean. Right, so let's have a look at what's happening on the solar disk. This is solar disk today on our side of disk from solarham.net. So we are currently spotless at the moment on the solar disk. So therefore, solar activity is at very low levels. We've been talking about this in the winter updates throughout this season. That we are entering into, or we are into now, solar minimum, and so we can expect solar activity to remain at very low levels for the foreseeable future. So Ham is reporting that we're going to keep solar activity at very low levels for the next 3 days, but you can expect this to go on quite a bit longer than that. This is the GWV's 8th Winter Update Solar Activity Tracker, updated as of today, as I'm doing video, 20th of October 2018, by a good friend James Acquill. So again, you can see we're at this very low level of solar activity. We can go all the way back to last autumn with this over on this side of the chart. And this is where we are right now. We're at a very, very low level of solar activity indeed. So we had a crash through the summer. We was around here through the early part of the summer at a very low level, of course, but we went even lower into this sort of crash through the middle and latter part of the summer, since when we have ticked up slightly, but we still remain at really, really low levels, to be honest. This is where we are right now The trends are virtually down on the bottom, on the floor of the chart. And the orange lines are each individual day's sunspot number. So we do get some days that have a small level of sunspots, 1 or 2 sunspots on the solar disk, but we get several days without any sunspots at all at the moment as well. So we are into solar minimum. When we will come out of solar minimum is an unknown, because we won't know until we have passed it, when we have reached true solar minimum and then gone on into the next solar cycle, which is solar cycle number 25. I anticipate it will be within the next 12 months or so. But obviously this winter is going to have a very low level of solar activity, which, as we've explained through reanalysis in the earlier winter updates, does increase the chance of northern blocking, again colder winters, but it doesn't guarantee it. So we have to look at other factors as well, but certainly solar activity will be remaining at very low levels for the winter of 2018-19. Big thank you to James for updating the solar tracker, and that'll be back next week for the 9th update. Right, Atlantic hurricane season next. So this is the 2018 Atlantic hurricane season page from Wikipedia, and if we scroll down to the scores on the doors, we can see this is how things are shaping up. So no change actually in all of the numbers since last week. For total depressions, we are at 15 total depressions. We're at 14 total tropical storms. We're at 7 hurricanes, and we're at 2 major category 3 or above hurricanes. That, all those numbers are unchanged. That is unchanged on last week. So the 2018 hurricane season has really gone quiet over the past few days, over the past week. There's been very little extra activity. We'll continue to monitor that, because we've got a little while to go yet with this hurricane season. So we may get a couple more storms or hurricanes coming along in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll keep a close eye on this. It's been a funny old season, this one, because excuse me, again, I got a little bit of a tickle in my throat tonight. So it's been a funny old season, because it's had quite a high number of depressions and storms, actually at 15 and 14. But not overly high for hurricanes, and actually probably below average for major category 3 or above hurricanes at just 2. So it has been a strange season, and we was expecting this to be a quiet season. I think it has turned out to be more active than we anticipated, but for hurricanes and major hurricanes, probably more what we was expecting. I think it's the storms and depressions have been a little bit surprising. We'll continue to monitor that over the next few weeks. Right, see what's happening in the stratosphere over North Pole. This is the latest in terms of the temperature at 30 HPA over the North Pole. The grey line, of course, is the trend line. At this time of year, we are in a cooling time of the year in terms of those stratospheric temperatures at the top of the atmosphere over North Pole. The black line shows where we've been so far and where we are with this season in terms of temperature, 30 HPA, and we're around average. To be honest, we are very, very close to average in terms of the temperature in the stratosphere at the North Pole, over North Pole at 30 HPA. If we look at 10 HPA, which is rather higher up, things are cooling a little bit there now. It is going a bit colder than average right at the very top of the atmosphere in the stratosphere at 10 HPA. We're under the grey line now with that black line. When you go colder than average with the temperature at the top of the stratosphere in the North Pole, it's one of the things you associate with an enhanced westerly, zonal westerly flow, and also one of the things that you associate potentially with an increase in the polar vortex in the stratosphere over the North Pole. So this is how things are shaping up in terms of the forecast for temperatures at 10 HPA over the North Pole. We've got a lot of different coloured lines here that take a little while to explain. So what I'm going to say is that, first of all, the blue line is where we've been in terms of the strength of the zonal winds through this season. We are now stronger than average with the zonal winds at 10 HPA. That's happened as the temperatures cool down in the stratosphere at 10 HPA. of course. The green lines are the GFS ensemble, so they only get us a couple of weeks in, but you can see that we are being forecast to stay a little bit stronger than average. The black line, of course, is the trend for this time of the year. So you can see that we are being forecast to stay a little bit stronger than average with the zonal winds at 10 HPA over the next week or so. But you'll notice, actually, if you look very closely at the screen, you'll notice there is a drop in the strength of the zonal winds being forecast by the GFS to take place as we get into the opening days of November. That's kind of like the first week of November. Just there, and at that point we do see a weakening of the zonal winds at 10 HPA, which is quite interesting because normally you would expect the zonal winds to be strengthening through November. As I say, that only gets us a couple of weeks in though, so relatively strong with the zonal winds at the moment, then potentially seeing a weakening of the zonal winds through the first week of November if the GFS ensembles are correct with that. You can definitely see a downwards tick on that on those green lines. Now, beyond that, these other coloured lines are the 4 individual CFS V2 runs that we get every day. So we get 4 CFS, long-range CFS runs updated every day. We get it at midnight, at 6 o'clock, at midday, and at 6 o'clock in the evening. So the rest of this chart is showing that we've got November just here, we've got December just there, we've got January just there. That's as far as we can go to like the final day of January. So real mix with these individual lines. So as I say, the pink and this blue line just here, each individual CFS member, you'll see that through November. What the CFS is forecasting is this one is dropping out very dramatically. So that's going for a dramatic weakening of the zonal westerlies through the course of November. To get such a dramatic weakening of the zonal westerlies, I assume that's going for some sort of southern stratospheric warming. Otherwise, the other 3 ensemble members are kind of like close to average or a little bit weaker than average through the course of November. Then we go through into December, and again we have this very, very weak ensemble member here in December, indicated by this blue line. This one also looks very weak as well, so we've got 2 that are going for a very weak zonal winds at 10 HPA during December. The other 2 are much closer to average. And then we go into January, and that's as far as we can go at the moment with this. So in January, we keep one of those ensemble members quite strong, up there above average in terms of strength of zonal winds during January. The other ones, though, are, before it drops off, that strong one that's up there during the early part of January then drops off the cliff through the course of January itself. That's again presumably through a sudden stratospheric warming event that the model is picking up on. The other ones are just quite weak really through the course of January with the zonal winds. I think overall, if we take all these 4 members individually and sort of group them together, I think overall the trend is definitely there through the early and middle part of winter to have relatively weak winds at zonal HPA. If we sort of ignore all of the up and down that's going on within this, I think most of these ensemble members are relatively weak with these zonal winds. They certainly aren't many of them that are stronger than average with the zonal winds, just that one just there really. So I think overall, early midwinter at the moment by CFS is being forecast to be relatively weak with the zonal winds. If we get weakened zonal winds, it does help the chance of getting northern blocking going over North Pole. We shouldn't have a stronger stratospheric vortex, a polar vortex, and we shouldn't... The temperature in the stratosphere over North Pole shouldn't be as cold if those zonal winds are weak. And obviously the opening days of November, we are already with the GFS ensembles forecasting those zonal winds to be weakening off after going through a slightly stronger phase over the past few days. We'll continue to monitor that through the rest of the winter updates. Right, Siberian snow cover next. So this turned into a bit of a fiasco last week when I tried to take you back through the archives at the National Ice Centre for Siberian snow cover. The website crashed, the website went down, and I wasn't able to show you those charts. I've got them all loaded up now. the website's been running okay up to this point, so I'm just hoping, keep our fingers crossed, that this is going to work for us. So we're going to begin by having a look at how solar activity, not solar activity, how Siberian snow cover was shaping up this time last week. This is the chart from Friday, the 12th of October, 2018. Got the two areas that were interesting. Of course, we've got Siberia and Russia just here, and then we've got Scandinavia over there. This point last week, we was doing pretty poorly, really, for snow cover. I wasn't able to show you it by going back through the years, but I was able to tell you that we was certainly behind most recent years in terms of Siberian snow cover. You'll probably have had to go back to 2011 or maybe in 2008 to find a year with as little snow cover as we got at this point in this year in 2018. This is the very latest that I can show you. This is from Friday, October the 19th, 2018. You can see we have increased snow cover quite a lot over the past week. So again, that was situation last week, Friday the 12th. This is the situation on Friday the 19th. Quite an increase in snow cover across northern parts of Russia and Siberia. Not much over Scandinavia, though. So we did have some snow cover over Scandinavia at the end of September. We lost all that at the start of October. We've lost all that at the moment, and there's very little snow cover over Scandinavia. Across sort of northern Siberia, we have increased the snow cover to some degree. But of course, you wouldn't expect us to be doing that because we are well into the autumn now. So yes, we have increased snow cover across Russia over the past week quite a bit, but how does that compare to recent years? Well, this is 2017, and I think we can say quite definitively that we are behind this point in 2017 in terms of total snow cover across both Russia and also across Scandinavia. So let's start running through the years if we can then, and it looks like it's going to work. So this is 2016, and again we're behind 2016 quite considerably, so across both Russia and also across northern Scandinavia. This is 2015, so again way behind 2015 in terms of snow cover this year across Russia. And then we're into 2014, again way behind 2014. At this point, the snow line had almost got into west of Russia. It also passed into Russia, Scandinavia as well. So obviously way behind 2014 at this point in the year, 19th of October. That's 2013. Again, we're behind the year of 2013 at this point. That's 2012. That's an interesting year in 2012. So in terms of Scandinavian snow cover, we're behind 2012 at the moment. In terms of Russian/Siberian snow cover, I think we're also behind 2012 as well. So let's move on to 2011 and see what we think about that year. So perhaps quite similar to 2011, although in terms of total snow coverage, I think we're probably a little bit behind 2011 now as well. So we're not doing very well at all, are we, compared to these past years? That's 2010. And certainly in terms of Scandinavian snow cover, we're behind 2010. Probably behind 2010 at the moment as well in terms of Russia and Siberian snow cover. That's 2009. We are way behind 2009 for Scandinavian snow cover, where at this point there's a lot of snow cover beginning to appear across Scandinavia. In terms of Russia, actually probably quite close. The areas that are covered are different compared to this year and 2009. But in terms of total snow coverage, probably quite similar to 2009 for Russia, but we're behind 2009 for Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2008, so what do we think about that year, where we have less snow across Scandinavia right now than we did at this point in 2008. In terms of Russia, I think we're probably a bit behind 2008 as well for Russian and Siberian snow cover. We're not doing very well at all compared to those past years. That is, again, 2018, and this is 2007 just here. Probably quite close to 2007. We're behind 2006, quite considerably so. That's 2005. I think we may be quite close. Again, the areas that are covered are slightly different, but I think in terms of total snow coverage, we're probably quite close. That's the correct chart. We're probably quite close to 2005 for total snow coverage this year. That's 2004. We are behind 2004, considerably so for Russian and Siberian snow cover. That's 2003. Probably quite close for Russia, but behind 2003 for Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2002, obviously way behind 2002 for both Russian and Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2001. We're behind 2001 as well. That's the year 2000. Probably quite close to that, but I think actually a little bit behind for Russian snow cover anyway. Probably quite similar for Scandinavia. But we really are doing very, very poorly within the archive here this year compared to most of these other years. That's 1999. So with this one, probably a little bit ahead of 1999, actually. That's a very, very slow start to the Siberian snow cover season in 1999. So I think for Russia, anyway, we are behind. We are ahead. Haven't said that very often in this update, but I think for Russian snow cover, we're ahead of 1999, but we're behind it for Scandinavian snow cover. And then the last year I can show you is 1998. We're behind 1998, both for Russia and for Scandinavian snow cover. So there's only a couple of years, maybe 2009 in terms of Russian snow cover. We're quite similar there, and we are ahead of 1999, but otherwise I think we're behind pretty much all other years actually within the National Ice Centre archive. Very, very slow season indeed. We don't go even further back than that though. With this website. This is the GSL Global Snow Lab website from Rutgers University, and we actually go back in 1960s with this. Now you've got to turn your head around because I can't flip the charts the right way. So you've got North America and Canada just there. We won't worry about that unless you're watching in North America and Canada, of course. That's the UK, Ireland just there. And this is Russia just here. This is Scandinavia just here. So I'm very, very quick going to run you through the year, starting at 1997. This is the area that we had in terms of snow coverage in 1997. That will be ahead of this year's snow coverage at this point, week 42. So we go through 1996, and probably quite close actually this year to 1996 for Russian snow cover, but not really for Scandinavia. That's 1995, and you can see that by this point in 1995, we're getting quite a bit of snow cover appearing across Scandinavia, and also across many parts of central Russia as well. So we are behind 1995 for snow covering Russia and Scandinavia at the moment. That's 1994, very slow start to the snow coverage season in 1994. We're probably quite close to 1994 actually this year. That's 1993, another fairly slowish start across Russia. Probably not all that far away from 1993, maybe a little bit behind it. And we're behind it for Scandinavia as well. That's 1992. Again, we may be quite close to 1992. 1991 was a slow start to the Siberian snow cover season across Russia as well. So I think, again, for both Scandinavia and for Russia, we're probably behind that. That's 1990, ahead of that, I should say. That's 1990. No snow cover at all across Scandinavia, you'll notice, in 1990. We did have a fair bit across Russia, though. And then we go through to 1989. I'm just going to zip through these very quickly, so you'll have to maybe go back and have a look at these if you want to slow down and compare to this year. I haven't got time to go through them slowly one by one. That's 1988, though. This is week 42, the current week in 1988. And look how little snow cover there was across Russia, just this far eastern part of Siberia, but otherwise nothing at this point in 1998 across the rest of Russia or across Scandinavia either. So, I mean, that was a really, really slow snow cover season, and 1987 to some degree as well. 1986 wasn't doing that good either. 1985, though, did have a lot of snow cover across these eastern parts of Siberia and Russia. Not as much in the west, but that would certainly be ahead of what we've got this year. That's 1980, so we've gone from 1985 to 1983, and again, quite a slow start to season 1983. That's 82, again, quite a bit over Russia and Siberia. 81 looks like that. That's how 1980 looks. This is going back a very long time, and you see that some of these years really slow getting the snow cover together. So we will be ahead this year of a similar point in 1980. That's 1979. This is 1978, before the severely cold winter of 78, 79, and just look how much snow cover there is across Russia, and also, crucially, into much of Scandinavia as well at this point in 1978. That's 1977, that's 1976. Look at that, virtually the whole of Russia already covered with snow at this point in 1976, and most of Scandinavia as well. That must have been an incredibly rapid advance of snow cover across Russia and Scandinavia in 1976. That's 1975, very slow start. 1975, 74, 73, 72. That's 1971. That's 1970. No data for 1969, not sure what happened there. That's 1968, so quite a bit of snow cover for the cold winter, 68, 69 across Scandinavia. Not as much across Russia, Siberia. That's 1967, and that's as far back as we can go to 1966. So a lot of these years, even going back to 1960s, we are quite clearly behind those years, but there are a few that we are ahead of, particularly, of course, 1988, 1987, I think 1980 as well. We'll continue to monitor Siberian snow cover, and we'll have more on that next week. Right, let's have a look at the oceans then next. So that's taken quite a bit of time, so I'm going to have to try and get through this as quickly as I can. This is how the oceans were looking at this point last week, when we had a look at sea surface temperature anomalies in the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. So 3 areas of interest in particular. We've got the North Pacific, which we just talked about at the start of the video. We've got the ENSO region just there. And then we've also got the North Atlantic over here. That's how the sea surface temperature was looking last week. This is the very latest. Look what's happened in the ENSO region. That was last week. This is this week. And we have not seen any further warming of the ENSO region. In fact, we have possibly seen a little bit of cooling compared to last week in the ENSO region. What do you think? I reckon the ENSO region has definitely cooled down, particularly over towards the Peruvian side, over the past week compared to what we saw this time last week. So that's quite interesting. I'll have more on that in a moment. In the Northern Pacific, still remains very warm scene up in this Northern Pacific. As I just told you at the start of the video, that's quite an unusual situation, although it is on a par with what we've been seeing over the past 2 or 3 years. In the Atlantic, again, very little change, cooler than average, with those sea surface temperature anomalies to the south of Greenland. The tropics close to average, and then this central area not too far from average really just here, although it does remain quite warm towards the east coast of America. This is an unusual sea surface temperature anomaly profile, as we explained in further winter updates. A little bit more on what's happening in the ENSO region. This is the SOI, the Southern Oscillation Index. It may explain why we haven't warmed those sea surface temperature anomalies up over the past week, because the SOI has actually been posting some quite positive numbers. So this is an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state between Darwin and Tahiti in the Southern Pacific Ocean. When the SOI is in its negative phase, the atmosphere is reflective of El Nino. When the SOI is in its positive phase, the atmosphere is reflective of La Nina, of a cold event. So you see on the 1st of October, for example, we have the SOI coming out at minus 23.92, very negative. That is really reflective of an atmospheric state that would be in an El Nino type setup. But as we come up to these more recent days, so we come to the 13th of October, just here, and we see, but we actually have a very positive number there at plus 24.11. The 14th comes out at plus 27.20. The 15th comes out at plus 21.40, and so on, going up. We get to the 20th of October, the very latest date that we can see here at the Bureau of Meteorology, and we're down to minus 4.71, so gone a little bit negative with the SOI on the 20th of October. But overall, these SOI numbers are much more reflective of a La Nina type atmospheric setup than an El Nino type atmospheric setup. And so this is telling us that the atmosphere in the past week anyway has been really fighting with what the ocean is doing. The ocean wants to produce an El Nino because it's got a lot of warmer than average subsurface temperature anomalies, as we explained in last week's update. But whilst the atmosphere is like acting as a lid on top of that warm water, El Nino is going to struggle. So it remains a mystery, really, where we're going with this El Nino. The modelling all wants to take us into El Nino conditions, albeit quite weak El Nino, CFSV2. So we've got the dates along the side, we've got temperature anomalies, I should say, on the side, dates are along the bottom. And we can see from the black dash line that CFSV2 very much wants to have us around weak El Nino condition, just over 1 degree above average. This seeing this weak El Nino continuing for winter of 2018-19. That's how the ECMWF is looking, again going for an El Nino event for this winter. So we see from the warmest to the coolest members, and these are the warm outlier members down here, these are the cool outlier members down there, but the mean sort of centre, if you like, mean thrust of the ensemble plume is around there. And again, that is in weak to moderate El Nino territory. It's actually strengthening as well in terms of El Nino on what the model was showing last month. So that was the ensemble plume last month, barely getting to 1 degree above average. This is the ensemble plume now. It has definitely strengthened the El Nino signature, as has Jamstec. Jamstec is actually at a borderline strong El Nino now. So again, we've got the dates along the bottom of the chart, temperature anomalies along the side. Jamstec wants to, at the peak of this, which in the start of 2019 up here, Jamstec wants to take this El Nino event to very close to 2 degrees above average, which is strong El Nino threshold. So Jamstec's actually going for a strong El Nino, can you believe? And big increase on September. That was September's forecast, barely getting to 1 degree above average with this El Nino event. But in October, it really has strengthened that signal a lot. Whether it will still be, whether these models will still be strengthening this signal, though, as we get through to next month's updates, and they'll all update at the start of next month, remains to be seen. They may actually back off from this a little bit because what's happening with the SOI and the fact that over the past week we haven't seen any further strengthening of those sea surface temperature anomalies in the ENSO region, and in fact maybe even weakened a little bit in terms of those warm anomalies. Right, we've talked for 37 minutes. I'm going to pause the video there. When I come back, we're going to see what the impacts could be if we go into an El Nino during the latter part of this year. So, sorry about that, I've got a tickling throat again. So, we are uncertain about whether this is going to be an El Nino winter or whether it will just be an ENSO neutral on the warmer side of ENSO neutral winter. Through reanalysis and our analogues, we're going to go through the years and see what it could mean if we are either going to be in an El Nino for this winter or if we're either going to be at ENSO neutral on the warm side. So I'll pause the video there. Going to get myself a drink of water, give my throat a little bit of a drink, and we'll meet back in around 2 minutes time. Why don't you go and get yourself a cup of tea and some biscuits? We'll meet back in 2 minutes time, and we'll talk about those analogues for ENSO. Alright, we're back and we're ready to resume the 8th Winter 2018-19 update. I hope you've been enjoying it, finding it informative so far. So we're going to go through our analogues package next for the rest of the 8th Winter 2018-19 update. Where we left off before we paused the video was that we was looking at ENSO. We've explained that we have seen warming of the equatorial Pacific Ocean over the past few weeks. The equatorial Pacific actually wants to go into an El Nino because there's a large body of significantly warmer than average subsurface temperature anomalies underneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. But the atmosphere over the past week anyway has been fighting against that a little bit. So we are, and it's very late in the season now to get an El Nino event going, although you can get really late starters. So we are very unsure about whether we're going to have an El Nino for this winter or whether we're going to be ENSO neutral on the warm side of ENSO neutral. We've definitely been ENSO neutral on the warm side. And one thing that we can rule out categorically is a La Nina. We are not going to get a La Nina cold event for the winter of 2018-19. So for our analogues package, we've got to go back to where we started from and then sort of progress forwards. So we can see on this chart, actually, this is left over from JAMSTech, the JAMSTech forecast that we signed off with before we paused the video. We can see that going back to the end of last year, that's October 2017 to January, we actually had a La Nina, we had a cold event at the end of last year into the first couple of months of 2018. So our analogues package is going to have to be, to start off with anyway, before we broaden it out, going to have to be La Nina, which is where we was at this point last year, to El Nino by the following winter, which is quite an unusual scenario. Normally you'll have a break from La Nina to ENSO neutral, and then you'll go into an El Nino event after that. So it's quite unusual to flip from a La Nina one winter to an El Nino the next winter. We don't actually have all that many analogues for this week's update, to be honest, certainly compared to other years, but we have got a few and they are quite interesting. So this is our first year, or our first winter. This is 1876-1877, and this went from La Nina, the previous winter, which would have been 1875-1876. It went from La Nina, the previous winter, to El Nino in the winter of 1876-1877. This is how that particular winter looks. Very unsettled winter with below average heights centred over the UK, bring quite a strong jet stream through as well. That's a mild, wet and windy winter in 1876-1877. The next one is 1880-1881. So again, this is going from La Nina to El Nino. Much more interesting winter, this one, this El Nino winter, with below average heights to the south and above average heights, look at that, up to the north. So a much colder signal there for the winter of 1880-1881. That's a very cold winter. It did include a severe January in 1881. This is 1904-1905. Again, it's an El Nino winter with a proviso that the winter before was La Nina. This one is quite an anticyclonic winter. It has above average heights out to the west of the country, with below average heights up to the north and also to the east. The flow and the jet going rather like that. So that's quite a quiet winter, 1904-1905. We're up to 1911-1912 next. This one looks very unsettled with below average heights out to the west, bringing in that southwesterly flow. It does have a bit of a northern blocking signal to our north, but overall this El Nino winter looks quite wet and you will think relatively mild in 1911-1912. 1925-1926 is our next El Nino winter, following a La Nina the winter before. This one has below average heights again to our west, and we bring through that mild, wet and windy southwesterly flow. Then we've got another interesting winter. 1939-1940 is a very cold, it's a severe winter, actually, with a really strong blocking signal over Greenland and Iceland, and then we get all of this low pressure down to the south of the country with a southerly tracking jet stream, bringing a lot of easterly winds, and they're bitterly cold easterly winds as well in the winter of 1939-1940. Again, that is El Nino following on from La Nina the winter before. The next winter is 1976-1977, El Nino winter following La Nina the previous winter. This one, unsettled winter with below average heights over the UK, does have quite a strong blocking signal. It's a front-loaded winter in that the coldest of weather is in December through to the early part of January, and then by February it does actually turn quite mild. And then the last winter within this analogues package is for 2006-2007. This is the last winter that went from La Nina, the winter before, to El Nino for this winter. This one is a very mild winter with below average heights up to the north, above average heights down to southwest. And we bring up those very mild southwesterly winds. A lot of dry weather in the south during that particular winter. So put all those years together, this is how the Decembers come out, and it's an unsettled signal for the Decembers really, with below average heights over the country. There is a blocking signal up to the north. It's not all that weak though. It's not that strong, I should say, in the Decembers. It's a relatively weak blocking signal. Looks like unsettled rules the Decembers. But look at the Januaries. This is Nina to Nino Januaries, and very much strengthening the blocking signal then in January over Greenland. Much stronger blocking signal with a below average heights to the south. That looks like it's a signal for a cold, potentially very cold month in January on average, with a lot of these Nina to Nino winters. The Februaries also contain a strong blocking signal, although it does move a little bit more towards the Canadian side and allows this low pressure to start to move northwards. The trough begins to push northwards a little bit during the Februaries, but overall, again, it does look as though those Februaries at least have a chance, on average, of being quite cold and wintry. And the Marches look like that. So the blocking signal reducing somewhat in the Marches, although still there to some degree. The below average heights rising northwards. It looks like the Marches are probably milder and wetter, although still with a low risk of getting something a bit colder. Overall, that's how the winters look, though, and there is a strong blocking signal for these winters. It's particularly focused on January, of course, but there is quite a strong blocking signal for these winters that go from La Nina to El Nino. They are El Nino winters, if you like. And again, we do see evidence of a southerly tracking jet stream as well. So I think that's a fairly encouraging analogues package, really, if anyone would like a cold winter. Another way of looking at this is going from ENSO neutral to El Nino. There are fewer of these winters that did that, because we have had quite a long run of ENSO neutral in between the La Nina last winter and where we are right now. So this is going from ENSO neutral on the negative side, on the cool side of ENSO neutral, to El Nino. First winter for this is 1913-1914, with below average heights close to the country. So it just looks like quite a mild, unsettled winter, 1913-1914. Next, we've got 1923-1924. This one has above average heights to the north of the country up here, with below average heights to the south. It looks like it should be a cold winter. I think for central parts of Europe, this was actually quite a cold winter, 1923-1924. For the UK, it was a relatively mild winter. 1951-1952 looks like that. So trough over Scandinavia, looks like it's very cold winter for Scandinavia, above average heights in the Atlantic. I think there was some cold weather at times in 1951-1952, although not remembered as an especially cold winter. Look at this one, though. This is El Nino winter going from ENSO neutral on the negative side. It's 68-69, and this is a cold winter. It has below average heights to the south. It has a very strong blocking signal up towards Greenland. There's a very cold and snowy February in 1969, and there's a famous white Christmas for many of us in December 1968. In between, January 1969 was quite mild. Next up is 1979-1980. So again, this is El Nino winter following ENSO neutral, and this one again with above average heights up to the north of the country, below average heights in the Atlantic, doing something like that. Looks like it should be a cold winter, but it wasn't particularly one of those sort of nondescript type winters that we get at times. That's 86-87, so again, quite interesting how that one has shown up in our analogues package. It has a blocking signal up to the north. It has these below average heights over and to the east of the country, across Scandinavia down to Eastern Europe. Easterly winds, of course, are fed in that scenario. It has a severely cold spell of weather in January 1987, and the cold is a bit on-off through the rest of the winter. This is 2002-2003, and this one looks like it should be a cold winter from the reanalysis, because it has, on average, an area of high pressure over Scandinavia, and you think we're bringing in quite a bit of easterly winds. It's one of those funny winters. We had a few of them in the 2000s that you would think, look at reanalysis and think it's a cold winter. Wasn't particularly a cold winter. Just one of those winters that never really came together, despite the fact that it did have relatively favourable patterns for a cold winter. Putting those together, this is how the Decembers come out. So very unsettled signal for the December, certainly not overly cold in the Decembers with below average heights over country. We have quite a strong ridge in the middle of the Atlantic as well, so that's favouring a westerly flow in the Decembers. However, the Januaries, again, very, very interesting indeed, because the blocking signal is increased big time in the January around Greenland, with below average heights to our south, pulling in those east to northeasterly winds. Obviously, we do favour, with this analogues package, chance of a cold January. Got to zoom in on February, and that's how the Februaries are looking. Again, favouring northern blocking in the Februaries across Greenland and also to our north. Below average heights down to the south. You would expect to be bringing in those easterly winds. Very, very interesting again for the Februaries. And this is how the Marches are looking. Unlike in the previous analogues package, with the Marches for these years, ENSO neutral to El Nino, we favour blocking in the Marches over Greenland with below average heights down here. And so once it gets going in January, it does look as though this could be favouring quite extended cold conditions through the Januaries, the Februaries and the Marches as well. The winters overall are favoured to be blocked, quite significantly so as well. This looks like a major update, this one. It looks like it's quite critical, actually, how much stronger this blocking signal is to our north compared to a lot of the analogues packages that we've been looking at this season. And then there's just one last option that we could have, which is to go from La Nina. Again, we had La Nina last winter, so to go from La Nina to just ENSO neutral, but on the warm side of ENSO neutral. So we don't get to El Nino. There's not enough warmth to get us into an El Nino winter for 2018-19, but there is enough to keep us at ENSO neutral on the warm side. And this is a very unusual scenario to do this, but there's only 3 winters that go with this final sort of thing that we can look at. The first one is 1887-1888. This is how the December to February's look with 1887-1888, with again that winter showing a strong blocking signal up to the north. We get the below average heights to the south, so it's a cold winter in 1887-1888. The next one is 1895-1896. That is going from La Nina to the warm side of ENSO neutral. This is an anticyclonic winter with high pressure very close to the country. And then the final winter, the only one that's done this since back in the 1800s, going from La Nina to ENSO neutral on the warm side, is 2012 13. And we know what happened with this winter. We have a very strong blocking signal to our north with the below average heights in the Atlantic and also to our east. It's a winter that gets more and more extreme as it goes along, culminating in one of the coldest Marches for over 100 years. Putting those 3 years together, I'd say a very limited analogues package for this last thing that we can look at, Nina to neutral on the warm side. But putting the 3 together, we see that December comes out. In contrast to the other 2 analogues packages, December actually comes out with a strong blocking signal and the below average heights to the east, the wind coming in from an east or northeasterly direction. But January's look like that, very anticyclonic with a really strong signal for above average heights to be to the north of the country. Again, you'd expect to be bringing in cold easterly winds with that. The February is also blocking signal, this time more to the northwest of the country. So again, you would expect all 3 of those winter months to be cold. And then the Marches take that cold blocking signal up to Greenland, so become more extreme, if you like, with the northern blocking signal in the Marches, the below average heights to our south, pulling in those winds from a northeasterly direction. Putting the 3 winters together, this is how they all look, all months and the 3 years combined. It is a signal for a cold of an average winter, very much so, with a strong blocking signal up to our north, the below average heights down to the south, and we're pulling in those east or northeasterly winds once again. And then the last thing I can show you is that bringing all of those 3 scenarios together, so bring together the Nina to Nino winters and bring together the ENSO neutral on the cool side to El Nino scenario, and then finally bring together the Nina to ENSO neutral on the warm side situation. Bringing it all together, this is how the Decembers look, all years combined. So we find that we do have a relatively weak blocking signal for the Decembers. They look very unsettled Decembers, and there is some cold potential because the centre of that trough is actually a little bit to the east of the country. The Januaries, look at that. That's mouth-watering if you want a cold January. Very, very strong signal for blocking to be over Greenland. We've got the below average heights with the jet stream down there as well. That is as good as it gets, really, if you want a cold January. And then the February is also looking very good if you would like a cold February. We do still have a very strong blocking signal, albeit does go a little bit more towards the Canadian side. Again, we've got all these below average heights with the jet stream down to the south, so favouring cold block conditions in January and February, and continuing into March as well. So in the Marches, again, we re-strengthen, if anything, the blocking signal around Greenland. Below average heights are down to the south with the jet stream as well. Very strong blocking signal in the Marches. And the winters, all of them together, so this is all from December through to March, so actually a little bit beyond the winters. It's not December to February, it's actually December through to March. Let's get rid of that. It's December through to March. And bringing them all together, we see it's a signal for colder than average conditions, significant blocking around Greenland, below average heights underneath it, jet stream to our south on the cold side of the jet. That's about as good as it gets if you would like a cold winter. I think that's a very significant analogues package that we've been through there. That's the most dramatic, I think it's the most dramatic that we've had so far through these winter updates in terms of cold conditions. So that really, those analogues really do favour a cold winter, I have to say. And I was really surprised when James sent those through to me a couple of days ago as I went through them. Quite shocking just how strong the blocking signal is through these winters if we use ENSO as our guide. Of course, we can't use ENSO on its own because we've got all of the other methodology, solar activity, Siberian snow cover, etc., etc. So when we come to do the winter forecast on the 2nd of December, this will make up a crucial part of the forecast, of course, but on its own, it won't be enough to be able to say, or to be able to forecast a cold winter. We'll have to combine it with the rest of the GWV's methodology. But I think this is probably the most dramatic set of analogues that we've had so far through this season of winter updates. If you would like a cold winter, really quite a dramatic analogues package this week indeed. Right, so that rounds up the 8th Winter 2018-19 update. Been a very long video. Thank you so much for sticking with it. Hope you found it interesting and informative. Some very, very mouth-watering analogues if you would like a cold winter, but we still have a long way to go before we're able to forecast a cold winter for you. The GWV's Winter 2018-19 forecast will be released on Sunday, the 2nd of December. Come back later on this afternoon when we'll have a look at the ECMWF and Meteo France seasonal models for the winter, and we've also got that third update, in terms of written updates anyway, for Christmas. This video will be placed on the winter updates and forecast page with a written summary, just going over everything that we talked about in the video, and that'll be around 7:30, 8 o'clock this evening, but at just shy of 1 hour. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Come back next week for the 9th Winter 2018-19 update. Thanks for watching.